Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our webinar series today. My name is Patrick Ray. I am one of the retirement advisors here with the Retirement Group, and I appreciate your attention this afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about one of the important topics of how to help people consider options to retire earlier than they otherwise had planned, to get rid of a myth that is very common, which is that you do not have access to your retirement assets prior to age 59 and a half. And frankly, that's not true. So I'm going to talk to you today about some of the things that you can do to consider getting access to your funds before you're 59 and a half and not be subject to the 10% penalty. But before I do that, I got a couple of things to cover with you. First and foremost, we are not affiliated in any way with any of the companies that we talk to employees from. We are a completely independent financial planning and retirement planning firm, and one of our main responsibilities over the last 30 years that we've been in business is to help people transition into a successful retirement. And we have a team of advisors with a ton of experience in an effort to help you in the event that you're looking for some help to get access to the bridge where you're going from an employee to a retiree. And so throughout the presentation today, you'll find links into the chat for a couple of things. First of all, you'll find a link to get access to our webinar libraries, where we've recorded in the past a bunch of very important topics that people ask very common questions on a regular basis to, and so we would encourage you to check those out and peruse those at your own leisure. And you'll also find a link in the chat to get access to our ebooks library, which is a bunch of short to read aspects of common questions and concerns that we get that we feel like are relevant to share with you. So we encourage you to check those out as well. And last but not least, if you're open to or interested in touching base with us on how to get access to one of the most important things that we have to offer you, which is a complimentary cash flow analysis. And you can view this as an effective stress test, if you will, of your overall retirement plans, because it's a way for you to gauge if you're on track to meet your overall goals and objectives. And this is a service that will provide you in the event that you wish to spend some time with us, and I'll talk to you further about that towards the end of the workshop this afternoon in order to do that if you choose to do so. If you're not already following us on our LinkedIn page, I encourage you to take a picture of the QR code that's on the screen as we speak, because it is a way that we get updates to our people on a very regular basis about the economy and things that are changing within your company, and healthcare discussions and interest rate type things and stock market related things, and just all things that are relevant to this general concept of what is probably best to get your arms around with respect to retirement and overall financial planning. So having said that, part of the challenge for us is to find a way to access retirement assets to help people reach their ultimate goals and objectives. And this is a graph or a picture of the sources that we usually rely upon in one way, shape, or form. One of them is Social Security. For some of you, it's a pension. For some of you, it's potential equity that you've built up in real estate. And then for others, it's a combination of all those things added to their 401k, which is their bucket of money that they've been saving in the years that they've been working. And of course, that's the accessible funds that you have. The question is how you get access to these things, especially if you happen to be one of those people who are either considering leaving the payroll and you're nowhere close to 59 and a half, or in some cases you've been asked to leave the payroll because the company that you work for doesn't have a position for you any longer, which unfortunately is becoming more and more frequent. And so what we're going to talk about today is a couple of things. First of all, there's a rule of something referred to as post-55 separation, okay, or the rule of 55. And what this has to do with, and this is very confusing in many respects, because sometimes people confuse this as a way of you being eligible for the company that you work for and when you're effectively allowed to get access to your retirement assets there. That's different than the rule that we're referring to today, which is the way to use your retirement qualified assets, even if you're not 59 and a half, to get access to those funds and not be subject to the penalty, the access penalty that the IRS has, which is a 10% figure. So we're going to talk about what the rule of 55 is. We're going to talk about how to use it. We're going to talk about some alternatives that you should be familiar with if you're considering post-55 as an option for you. And then we're going to finish up with the bottom line of what this all means in the grand scheme of things, okay? So what is Rule 55, or what is the rule of 55? And basically this is a rule that allows you to withdraw funds from your 401k or your 403b type plans and not be subject to the 10% penalty because you're not yet 59 and a half. And while on the surface this sounds unbelievable, and maybe even to some of you it sounds like it's not possible. The reality is it's very possible, but you have to follow some very strict criteria in order to have this applied to you. And the very big or main one is that you have to be turning 55 at least in the year that you leave the payroll, okay? So you can be 56 or 57 or 58 or 59, but not yet 59 and a half. But if you're 53 and then leave the payroll, this rule will not apply to you. So it's very strict, and it's very, very straightforward, which is you have to be turning 55 in the year that you leave your job. And it doesn't matter if you left on your own terms or if the company asked you to leave on their terms, or you're going to, in fact, a different job. Maybe you chose to leave company A and go to company B, which is certainly an opportunity that you might take advantage of. And but maybe company B and the new job is not paying you quite as much as the other job was. And so we see this for some of you that were at risk of losing a lot of money because of what the interest rates were doing to your lump sum pension values. And we had a lot of folks that considered options, and one of those options is to leave and go to a different company, even though they may not have been getting the same kind of compensation that they were from the previous company, but it was going to save them tens and tens and tens, and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars on their pension value, because they were able to exchange those pension funds into a rollover IRA where they control the funds and not be subject to that interest rate risk. And so a lot of those folks were employing a strategy of using post 55 separation as a way to help supplement the difference of what they were making prior, and with a new company based on withdrawals from their 401k or their 403b using post-55 separation payments, which is an income taxable event, of course, but it does not subject you to the 10% penalty. So you're still going to pay income tax on what you take out, but it's going to save you 10% on every dollar that you remove, and it applies to 401ks and 403bs and all plans that allow you to get access to your funds after you leave the payroll. So as long as you're turning at least 55 in the year that you leave the payroll, this will be an opportunity for you. And so because of these rules, you must leave your job, as I mentioned to you. You cannot retire earlier than 55, or the year you're turning 55, and then age in, as an example, to get to post 55 rules. So what I'm talking about is someone who's 52 or 53 years old, as an example, and they decide to leave the payroll and then expect that in a few years they're able to utilize the post 55 separation rule, and unfortunately it would not apply to that individual. So you literally must be turning 55 in that same calendar year as you leave the payroll, and then you would have this option available to you to get access to penalty-free income that's just simply income taxable income to you when you remove it from the plan. So this is somewhat of a complicated structure of how to set this up, or what happens, and a lot of it is a function of the company that you work for, because certain companies have criteria that you must follow over and above this to meet their rules, which is typically a frequency of how often you can remove the money. So we work with some companies who allow you to do it one time a year. Some companies allow you to do it once a quarter. Some companies allow you to do it up to 8 times a year. And within the framework of those structured withdrawal options, some of them allow you to apply a monthly income setup as one of those options. So in other words, if your company allowed you to do 4 withdrawals, you can utilize one of those 4 withdrawals to set up a monthly cash flow that says, please send me $1,500 a month on the first of every month starting next month. And so that would utilize one of your accessible withdrawals that given year. So you'd then have, in this case, 3. If your company only allowed you 4, you'd have 3 options to get access to your funds and reach into your 401k or 403b and remove that money and simply pay tax on what you take out and be not subject to the 10% penalty because you were it applied to post 55 rights. But many of our post-55 separation folks have alternatives, and we'll talk about that because there's a special one that applies to you folks who need access to your money who's not 55 either, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But to finish up our conversation about the rule of 55, another exception or an alternative to this is you could be totally or permanently disabled. So, for example, if you're on Social Security disability, that is an automatic waiver for you to get access to your retirement funds and not be subject to the 10% penalty, even though you're not yet 59 and a half. This rule also applies where you're not paying a penalty if you happen to be a beneficiary. So if you inherited an IRA, you're not subject to that 10% withdrawal rule, and you're required to remove that money in a 10-year window of time as the IRS allows. So you're not subject to those penalties either. Another exception is the deductible medical expense rule, where if you have distributions that exceed 7.5% of your adjusted gross income, this is also an automatic waiver. You could also be subject to IRS levies, and that's an automatic waiver, as well as receiving qualified distribution reinvestment in reservist income, for distributions, as well as something referred to as a substantially equal payment plan, or in other words, 72T. So for those of you who might consider this and may have heard of this rule before, post 55 is one of your options, assuming that you are turning 55 at a minimum in the year that you leave the payroll. But for those of you who are not yet 55 and still potentially need access to your retirement assets and not want to be subject to the 10% penalty, you might consider something called 72T. 72T, another word or phrase for that is what they refer to as a SEP plan, and it stands for Substantially Equal Payment Plans. And it allows you to take penalty-free income from your IRA accounts. So if you weren't 55 or turning 55 in the year and one of your only buckets of money was your 401k, you could roll your 401k into an IRA and then establish this 72T payment to be able to get penalty-free income from your IRA and not have to pay that penalty to the IRS, which is 10% of every dollar you take out. So just like post 55, there are some set rules of criteria that you need to consider with respect to how it works and what you're subjected to. And so first and foremost, you have to take substantially equal payments under this plan for at least 5 years or until you're 59 and a half, whichever of those two periods of time are longer. So as an example, you could be 56 or 57 years old and start your plan, but that person would have to take their payments until they were at least 61 or 62 years old respectively before they could eliminate the 72T withdrawal schedule. Where conversely, if we have a 51 or a 52-year-old and they need access to retirement assets and we establish a 72T payment for them, once they turn 59 and a half, because that window of time is longer than 5 years, they're able to subject themselves to normal distributions and not have to take 72T payments out of their plan. So basically, this permits IRA owners to take a withdrawal, an early withdrawal, and not incur the 10% penalty. So remember, it's still subject to your current income tax rate and whatever you pay income tax on, and then you must continue to take those distributions as a mainstay for at least 5 years or until you're 59 and a half, whichever of those two windows of time are longer. So the bottom line is the rule of 55 and a combination of the rule of 55 and our post 55 separation and rule 72T. By the way, you can use both of those, and we have many folks who are utilizing the money in their 401k to take post 55 separation payments from, and they're using their IRA, which holds their pension dollars as an example from their pension lump sum that they chose to take when they left the payroll, and use a 72T structure from that IRA. So it is very possible that you can do both, and you're able to do both, and sometimes it's mandatory for you to do both if you're planning on leaving your 401k at the company level and you still need income because maybe your new job is not paying you as much as you were making at the current employer that you have. So the biggest takeaway from this is that this is not something that we're advocating that you absolutely do. It's just another arrow in the quiver, if you will, on options that you have and you want to be subject to, so that you understand some of the things that are in front of you if you're considering something as important as transitioning into retirement and you're not yet 59 and a half. So Certainly this depends on everybody's individual situation and what your specific goals are and your financial situation and your tolerance for risk and all these other things that we would have to talk to you about to develop a plan that's consistent with all of these things so that we can give you correct and absolute advice that makes sense for you and your family. But the more that you can educate yourself, the better off position that frankly you'll be. And so this is why we advocate that there's no real too soon of a time frame, so to speak, for you to start thinking about and doing some planning or doing some homework. In fact, what we know is 74% of people over the age of 50 do not have a written financial plan. And frankly, there's no excuse for that, because firms like ours do this for an opportunity to talk to you about their services, right? So we don't charge people to do a cash flow analysis for them and to go through their plan and to do a stress test of where they are at financially, because we're hoping that we can develop a rapport and a relationship with you that if you're looking for some help in retirement, you would consider us as a investment firm to do business with ultimately when that time comes. And so once you have a plan in place, it just makes the transition of moving and transitioning into a successful retiree just that much easier. I mean, I've been in this business for 24 years now, and the people that I can pull back from getting them from an employee to a retiree that we did some planning and homework ahead of time, most all of them will tell you that the process was just so much easier when you knew what the expectations were, when you knew what the plan was, and you knew what options that you had and what things you could or could not consider to meet your overall goals and objectives. So if you have any interest, you're welcome to email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. This is one of the ways you can reach out to us, and we'll have one of our team members get back to you. You can also call us at 800-900-5867, and one of the people who answer the phone on our team will obviously help you as well. You can also take a picture of the QR code to the left, which is access to a calendar where you can pick a window of time that's convenient for you to chat with one of our team members and get access to their calendar so that you can pick a time that works for you to talk with them. And as I mentioned at the beginning, if you are already not following us on our LinkedIn page, I would encourage you to do that, because we have a lot of updates and things that are certainly relevant for you to consider and take advantage of. So take a picture of that QR code to do so. So what I'm going to do is check the list of questions that we have to make sure that we address these, and then I'll let you go for the afternoon. And so let's see here. First question: can I retire earlier than 55 and still receive post-55 separation tax benefits? Okay, so we talked about the main criteria basically for this rule of post-55 separation. And the main criteria is you have to be turning 55 in the year that you leave the payroll. So this is somewhat of a trick question. I suppose if this person is retiring earlier than 55, in other words, they're 54 and they're turning 55 in this particular tax year, then the answer to this question is yes, you can absolutely get access to your money and use these post-55 separation tax benefits to avoid the 10% penalty. However, I had talked about a scenario where if you're 51 or 52 as an example and then leave the payroll, you cannot then wait 2 or 3 years to get access to the funds and then apply the post-55 rule, because that is not going to check the box that authorizes you to be able to do so. So in that scenario, the answer would be no. Next question: how does post-55 separation differ from other forms of retirement tax planning? Boy, that's a great question, because there are benefits of some other types of tax plannings with respect to where you get your income from and trying to maintain something we refer to as a tax efficient retirement. But oftentimes you can't do that until you're beyond the 59.5-year time frame, so that you're not subject to that added 10% penalty. And so what we were talking about today was a way to get you access to supplemental income through your post-55 separation and or a 72T structure, so that you can pay yourself and enjoy retirement, or at least supplement the income you're getting from a new job, for example, to cover the differences that you used to make, and just simply not be subject to the 10% penalty. So I don't know if there's any difference with respect to retirement tax planning as a whole. It's part of the big picture in my eyes. So this would be part of the overall tax planning box that we would want to check that says we've kind of went went through all the options for you and considered the things that are necessary and relevant for you to be able to make an intelligent and important and an informed decision on what's best for you and your family, that's for sure. Next question, are there more favorable tax implications on income tax when using post-55 separation of service? Great question. The answer is there's nothing favorable about paying income tax for the most part. And so understand that the post-55 rule and or the 72T rule is structured so that you don't have to pay the penalty to the IRS and the penalty of getting access to your money prior to age 59 and a half. It does not alleviate you in any way from paying income tax on what you take out. So based on your other forms of income for your household and how you file and your deductions and basically what you end up as an adjusted gross income would be relevant to what you're going to pay as far as tax is concerned. But the bottom line is 100% of what you take out of your retirement accounts would be taxed as ordinary income. Last question. Let's see. How do I apply to see if I qualify for post-55 separation tax benefits? Well, that's a good question. We'd first ask ourselves if we fit the main criteria, which is that you're at least turning 55 in the year that you leave the payroll. So if we can't answer yes to that question, the rule's not going to apply to you. But if we can answer that yes to that question, then we have to dig a little further into the administrator of your plan, which for many of you would be Fidelity or Voya for the most part. For many of the folks that we see or talk to, some of them use Hewitt, and but basically we would want to contact the administrator, unless we otherwise know this, and in most cases we already know, how frequent you can actually take money out of your 401k or 403b to apply the post-55 separation method. So once we check the box to see if you qualified, the only answer you have to ask yourself to answer correctly is if you turn 55 in the year that you leave the payroll. And if the answer is yes, then basically you qualify. And then the next most important thing is how often or how frequent you can get access to your retirement funds through your administrator to supplement your retirement income and act accordingly. So if they only allow you one withdrawal a year as an example, then you're going to have to get accustomed to having one pool of money that you pull from 12 times a year before you turn around the next year and do it again. So, and conversely, if you can take it out 4 times a year as an example, then you'd have to do so quarterly. But some firms allow you to set that payment up as one of your withdrawals every single month. So you can say, I want my payment on the 15th, I want 15% federal and 5% state taxes withheld, and so they withhold the taxes for you and then send you the net difference, and that's what you get to spend for your income that's not subject to the 10% penalty. So, I feel like I've kept you long enough for the afternoon. Certainly, I appreciate your time and energy and spending a few minutes with us this afternoon. Hopefully, we answered all of your questions relevant to this particular topic, but if we had not done so, please reach out to us. You can call us at 800-900-5867, and you can also email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. So, with that, I'll leave you for the afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you found value in spending some of your precious time with us this afternoon. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you.